Central, but in case you're wondering why the shots were a little bit shaky, it is a phone that she's using, and she's both the camera person and reporter. But for now, let's go to the Dawn debate where Michelle is going to be driving this conversation. Michelle.
All right, and Michael, we're still focusing on that voter verification process. In studio with us, a governance expert, Raymond Ochieng. And many thanks for joining us on the Dawn debate.
Thank you, Michelle.
So we've heard from Kenyans on the streets. Clearly, not very much information, first of all, that they have, and still a lot of complaints. Many of them saying that they did not find their names when they went to register or verify their details, rather. So IEBC is getting to this very crucial process of voter verification with allegations of about 2.9 million ghost voters in the voters register. This was, of course, introduced in the law after people found the details missing on the day of elections. But so far, with the timelines going, this started about on the 11th of this month. Are we on the right track?
Michelle, I'm very certain that we are not on the right track, because when it comes to the whole process, there are very many stakeholders, there are many players, and two, to highlight, one are the citizens, then two is the IEBC as the moderator of the process. And this is not the first time that we've raised this in terms of how IEBC has worked towards enhancing public confidence, because you've even seen what we've seen with you and Mike here, that you'll find Kenyans are being interrogated about voter registration, and you're surprised at what they're saying on set. Because ask yourself, in 2003, did you see the magnitude of voter education that we had? In terms of just simplifying, in terms of the messaging toned down to that pedestrian who is down there to know what does it take. I even got, there was a time I was in another studio, and a reporter was asking somebody that, what have you come to do here? And he said he came to register, and this is voter verification. And somebody was asking that he has come to register, and this is a very decent person who is even going to work. So this is not even a normal Kenyan down there who is struggling, who are forming even the basis of 60%.
And this is considering that IEBC began voter education on the 10th of May, while this process began on the 11th of May. But we're still seeing quite a bit of misinformation about among Kenyans. But IEBC still says that the audit of the register is still ongoing, and this will be done simultaneously in tandem with the voter verification process to save time. But then again, this voter verification is a very intense process. It needs a lot of concentration, so to speak. Is this a good idea to do both of these at the same time?
It is not. Actually, the concept that the IBC is using is the mushroom effect, whereby you'd want to grow things in the dark and constantly throw progress at people. Because this process, Michelle, needs public participation of every Kenyan. And it is a right in Article 36. Every Kenyan has got a right to make political choices, and not to just make political choices in just a spectrum whereby there is no accountability. Article 86 is very clear from A to D. It talks about this election process must be accessible, must be accountable, must be verifiable. So if that is not done, and Michelle, sorry on IBC, because the threshold that constitutionally has been underpinned to measure the success of this election is too high, and it is not negotiable. And we had somebody asked on the street today here in the morning talking about post-election violence. And remember, there is something that we should not forget as Kenyans. In 2007, 2008, do you know how many people got misplaced? We had 3,500. That's almost an equivalent of Kiambu or Kilifi County displaced. We had a mega, and this is just a mega statistics, of 1,500 people that died in the post-election violence. And you see sometimes, if a nation, we are not going to recount our experiences and have our learned lessons. It is not the first time that we are to appear even on set with an IBC commissioner. Then, for lack of no better reason, they just don't appear. And you see, whether they have something that they are doing, it does not earn public confidence. I may be a Kenyan middle class. I may take it that easy. What about the majority?
All right, as is the case today, of course, we were supposed to have an IEBC commissioner on set, but as you can see, we only have governance expert Raymond Ochieng. Many thanks for staying with us, but of course, we do need to make that clear. But now speaking of accessibility, because this is something very important. Many Kenyans still don't know where this voter verification is taking place. Is it the same place where they're registered as voters? Are we going to have IEBC stands and IEBC commissioners, officials rather, on various places on the streets? Or where is one supposed to go for this process?
The verification has to take place in the station that you registered. And that's why you'll find people going to wrong destinations. And when they give their IDs, they are being told from the system, you do not belong here.
Right.
But Michelle, where we went, before we even asked that, have you told these Kenyans? Because I'm telling you, even at the point of middle class who are franchised not to really bring impact into these processes, because mostly they're on Twitter, and we assume they are the most informed.
Right.
I talked to some of them, they'll even tell you they even go to wrong stations. So voter education has to go in tandem with this process, and it must be given the attention that is required, the threshold that is required. And also you mentioned even something that was very clear, that remember, this thing is happening simultaneously with what KPMG is doing.
Right.
That was another huge process that you really find the incapacity of IEBC. And I don't know what went wrong in terms of, do they not have enough resources? Because the threshold is a little bit very high. And I think the political players are also busy tossing them. And remember, the IBC is also a creation of the political players.
Raymond,
Yes,
the question here would be, where is the disconnect? Because IEBC, as far as they're concerned, I spoke to an officer yesterday, and they were saying, look, we've done all that we can. We have published information. We have put information on radio stations. Of course, we were giving them a platform today to even have that information out, but they're not here. But can we entirely blame the IEBC? Could it be that Kenyans also are lethargic by nature? And naturally, you know, there's the phenomenon that Kenyans normally do things at the very last
We
minute.
are very unique creatures. And Mike, that's very true. Kenyans, we are very unique creatures. And, you know, we are we are a last-minute nation that mobilize ourselves around deadlines.
You'll start asking for an extension of the process.
Yeah, and then we expect an extension.
And I hope you didn't prepare for this news 1 minute to. so that's a fact. But in terms of how the Kenyans should have been, and I may have a raw statistics on this. We have, in the last previous general election, we had 53 million USD that was only on voter education. And this was not only by the government players, this was by the non-state actors that pumped 53 million. Right now, we are not even operating at a quarter of that. And that tells you that if 2 or 3 we went the way we went, in terms of the intensity, in terms of the polarization that happened, and we had 53 million pumped into that USD. And what about now, this time, whereby the voter education is not? And one thing, Mike, that I told the IEBC, and they owned up, they said they are going to work on their messaging. They are going to work on their communication strategy, because they may be doing a lot of things. And you remember, Michael, IEBC becomes too brilliant when they have to address an issue that they have been pushed on the wall to.
Right.
But you see how this process should be? We should be getting, and some of them should not be press releases and done online. Because let me ask you, Michelle, the Mama Mboga down there, will they access
that is
Twitter
the point,
and
because
read that? Will
according
they
to
go to the
IEBC,
website? They will not.
every verified vote will be uploaded on their portal. The question is, how many people can access that information?
That is the question. Do we, right now, we have border operators. Most of them, they don't even know the complexity and the intricacy that you have to go through in terms of even, I was trying to go to through the IBC website today, and I think it didn't go through either. I don't know whether I had bundles or not. But what I'm asking is that, what about that common Kenyan data? Will they be knowing what Chebukati had said and posted online?
But to be fair, Raymond, what is it that we expect IEBC to do? Because if they have published, they've put it on the newspapers, we have talked about it on TV. This is not the first time we're talking about voter registration. We're giving the deadlines when it's coming up. The question that they might ask, to be the devil's advocate here, is what more can they do?
What more can they do? And Mike, you're a communication expert. You know, in terms of how you do messaging across cohorts. They are the intellectual part of this nation that accounts for a very small percent. Then we have the over 60% who are more of Kenyans are semi-literate. In terms of ICT, it even now, the percentage even goes higher in terms of the semi-literacy. So in terms of toning down the message, we know one of the major concepts, you know the Kenyans' backyard, them tars, that as we can call them, you need to do road shows. You need to bring, last year, and I'm not vouching for comedians and celebrities to make money. You remember that in the previous elections, they were really used around voter mobilization. You need to bring the musicians of this world. You need them to go down there. You need them to go down and talk to these people in terms of this is how you're going to do it. And I know you can even ask anybody here in the studio that have you gone to do your verification? What do you even do? Somebody will tell you, I don't know whether I need my ID. I don't know where I need to go to. So in terms of Mike, how this message needs to be toned down to the majority. And remember, it's the majority that fights.
Right, so then where do we go from here?
You will knock a deal that day of the elections, and you'll just be posting that you're going to Mombasa and you have to make...
Right now, we're only working with 76 days to the election. So instead of now just bringing IBC is doing this wrong, they're doing this wrong, let's tell them what to do. So what do we expect IBC to do to make this process seamless?
To make this process seamless, IBC's communication strategy must now be robust. Because remember, Michelle, what happens is you may be doing a very good thing, but the fact that you don't bring the players, and remember, these elections has got a lot of stakes. It has got some party premiers, supremos who, this is their last lifeline. And this country, and I've always said I'm not a pessimist, but I've said that this country is polarized than never before. And recounting on what we had last year, because you see, IBC is mandated constitutionally, IBC has the authority to educate people, IBC has the authority and the legal rights to bring all the players on board and say, this is what we are going to do. Do you have anything to add? Yes, we are going to roll it tomorrow. Not doing it from an ivory tower and dropping it. It may be right, but remember, that's why you always get to hear Jubilee and CORD. One day CORD is saying that, you know what, Jubilee is holding brief for IBC. The other time, Jubilee Party is saying CORD is trying to bulldoze the process. So then it means along the political value chain, there's mistrust. And this mistrust, it's IBC that has to reduce the opaqueness of the process. Whether things are doing right, they have to be as transparent as possible. And I agree with what you're trying to say. We cannot bring every notion on board, but valid things that needs to be brought on board, you need to assure every constituent that we are taking that seriously.
And just speaking of voter education, whether Kenyans understand, well, one of our viewers here, Michael Kihara, is asking, what does it mean to audit the register? What's that going to do in the electoral process? So still a lot of things that Kenyans need to understand. So this is being done simultaneously.
Remember, between independence up to now, it is alluded that 2 million people are dead. And those 2 million people have to be extracted from the register. And I've all even told political parties, look at sometimes what NASA is doing. And sometimes we really put a lot of energy on the party primaries, and they're forgetting one thing, that if they also don't come out and this is now what you asked me, it's not only the IBC. The political players have a role to play. In terms of right now, NASA and Jubilee have a role to make sure that voter verification, because remember, this election can also be won on the register. Mike, you heard that before.
Absolutely.
That in terms of how you're going to make sure that this register is not adulterated as possible, then that makes, so that we do not have after elections, we have a dispute whereby a party says that almost 1 million dead voters voted. But the question you'll be asked, what did you do about the voter verification?
Right. I mean,
which should be taking place. And the other thing that I think we need to also, and I'll put this to you, to speak to the Kenyans. What do they need to do? Because here we put blame normally on institutions, but we absolve ourselves. But Kenyans, I think, have a huge responsibility as well to take up their role as a voter.
The role of the Kenyans, and I hope I had one of the political classes here, and I always tell them, they're a big problem, either from NASA and from Jubilee. But the question that, the reality that we have seen from the primaries, we've realized that there is the power of the Kenyan voting to make a decision. We've seen candidates that were propelled from the top levels and put down the throat of Kenyans. What did Kenyans do? Kenyans made a decision. And in many cases, Kenyans told Raila, told Uhuru that we will support you, but this candidate, we will not, because they've not represented the interests of the people. So this is a call that Kenyans have to do right now, that Mike, they have to go and verify and take responsibility. Because remember, if we bring again the wrong, and you remember there is a mantra that is going, thugs are rising to power. In terms of Article 238, Article 210, 258, and Article 210, there is one thing that is clear, and Chapter 6, the integrity threshold. So if we are going to be complaining that, look, Look at what the politicians are doing. But if we are complaining, then we have to make the right decision, or else we're going to live with them.
And I hope that
in the
will
next
make a
5 years.
difference, especially going what we
true.
saw in the nominations. We still saw a lot of people with integrity questions still being nominated.
Yes.
And the Kenyan voter is an interesting person to study. But let's focus on the diaspora vote, because we also have 5 countries where there are registered voters, and the verification process there began on the 15th of May and will continue all the way to the 30th of May. But there's a lot of controversy with the registration of voters in the diaspora. We had a lot of allegations that we had political parties registering voters from Uganda, registering voters who are not Kenyan citizens. So in terms of verification there, a lot of questions still yet to be asked. Has IEBC come out really to inform Kenyans of how it's going to play out?
How it's going to be. And I think in terms of diaspora, I've just had it in terms of a subtitle. But in terms of details, intricate details around this matter, it's not yet known. So the question is, and I believe that IEBC may even be doing right on diaspora. But the thing is, if even on the lowest marks, we really believe that you're not doing the right thing, we'll have all the rights. And remember, in terms of performance is a perception. Just a barometer to put in terms of, even if I ask, do you think Mike is a good presenter, and we throw it back to the Kenyans, it will just be a perception or survey. So in terms of this, I believe that even in the diaspora, is it too much that IEBC is going to involve themselves that they cannot chew? Because there are fundamentals, Michelle, that have believed that IEBC, because in the first place, look at Article 86. It is even very clear that IEBC should not even be going to court to question how results should be announced, because those are underpinned there. So if they are doing that, how sure are we that even in terms of the little things that they should be doing, Michelle, we are still not clear. They are telling us they are doing it. They may be doing it.
Right.
But they are not communicating. So how will we know now, even when we go to diaspora, that even becomes more complicated?
So let's pose a question you're posing to our viewers this morning. Have you verified your vote?
I have verified my vote.
Right, so let's get into the nitty-gritties. What details do you need? Where do you need to go? Are you using your ID card or using your voter's card? What do Kenyans need to use?
You use your ID card and you go to the polling station that you're registered. Because if you go to the wrong polling station, you'll be told you are not registered here. Go to your polling station.
All right.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, how long does the procedure take? Because I'm sure some people are thinking, well, maybe it'll take me 20 minutes and I don't have that time. How long did it take you practically?
I think I was there 10 minutes. But again, what we said last time, I think maybe it may come to a point where how per minute rating, how do you take in terms of using a device? But again, in terms of Mike, it comes to our duty as Kenyans. We ration late. And sometimes you go to these verification points and you'll find that there's nobody. And you'll find that 2 days too, we will be foot on gas.
Right, and of course Kenyans need to understand why this process is important. What would be the implication if we got the elections without a fully audited register?
And Michelle, do you know where the problem will? The problem is not even going to be the normal Kenya. The problem are going to be the political parties. Because political parties are going to dispute and question the integrity of the elections. And I know some of the things that they'll be highlighting, that even in terms of the voter register, look at the primaries. Look at the emergence of the independent candidates. I say this has just been equated by the value chain, how it was not clear in terms of bringing the candidate. And you see, now we have in Kenyan history, and I know this is the first time that we are having this, we have a huge number. And what happens is that we had shambolic elections, not only across all the parties. And you see, this has brought, Michelle, a big number of independent candidates. And that tells you, and when you ask them, what are they say? Some will tell you the register we were using was for 2013. Some are saying the register is updated. So even the questions of the register at the primaries was a question. Now, what about when this happens at the national level?
General election.
Yeah, general elections stakes are going to be high. And that's a point whereby either party, if Jubilee or NASA wins, one will go and say that there was a problem. And if you raise the problem of the register, and that's why I've advised the political parties, this is the time that they should not complain. This is the time that Jubilee should go on the ground, put boots on the ground. NASA should put boots on the ground. and make sure you go and you check your status. If you are dead, please put an oxygen and be alive.
Of course, so 2.9 million ghost voters, they're still needing to be taken out or removed from the voters register. And if you have registered as a voter in the recent past, you of course need to verify your vote and check if the correct details have been captured by the IEBC to avoid any inconvenience on the 8th of August. And just a reminder of our question of the day, we're asking you, have you verified your vote on this process that ends on the 9th of June? Of course, it is a 30-day process that commenced on the 11th of May. We'll continue to read out your thoughts and comments as we go along. Have you prioritized voter verification that is set to end on June 9th? That is a question we're asking you this morning.